Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know that in any walk of life, it's hard to break free of patterns, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm assuming you do, you're listening right now, you can subscribe to the podcast. That would be superb. You can find us over at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, basically anywhere where you get your podcasts. Plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel, so if you can give us a like and subscribe there, we'd really appreciate it as well. Also, you can find us on the social media, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And plus, we're on the TikTok at In the Seats just for the hell of it, for a little bit of fun. But finally, and I say this a lot, but it is most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image in general, because that's what we love to write about and talk about, and we love it when you come and read about it. So please come on by. On this episode, we got another interesting one to be sure. We're looking at the film Bone Cage, which is available on VOD platforms now, from writer-director Taylor Olson, who adapted this from a stage play from a writer by the name of Catherine Banks, and it's the story of Jamie, who works as a wood processor, clear cutting for pulp. At the end of each shift, he surveys the destruction and walks through and looks for injured animals and rescues what he can. And Jamie has this unwielding desire to break free from this world that he's living in, and he's ends up being thwarted by the environment and the circumstance that he's trying to escape at every turn. It's a real humanistic, sort of fascinating story that writer, director, and star Taylor Olson knows all too well because, as you'll find out, he actually worked on the stage version as well. And we had the unique pleasure of talking with Taylor about his experiences doing that and knowing this material back to front, being able to adapt it for the screen, and so very much more, especially with the challenges of directing yourself in a movie like this. And it's a real interesting talk, and Taylor's a really interesting guy for a real interesting movie in Bone Cage, which I do recommend you go check out on all VOD platforms now. But first, enjoy our talk with Taylor, because it's a good one. Now, I mean, I guess first off, just congratulations on the film, man. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I guess my first question is, I guess, because this is adapted from a play, so like walk me through sort of initially discovering the play and deciding, you know what, this could work as a movie.
Yeah, totally. So it's written by Catherine Banks, who's one of my favorite playwrights, sort of period, not just, in Canada or Nova Scotia, right, but she just happens to live here too, which is kind of amazing for us. And I found it in university when I was studying acting, a classical theater program at Dalhousie. And then a couple years later in 2017, I was lucky enough to do the stage version and play Jamie on stage. And it was maybe the second day of rehearsal that it sort of clicked for me. I think this could make a great movie. My family has worked in the logging industry for generations. So my dad's a heavy duty mechanic in the logging industry for years. My grandfather on one side worked a wood processor. On the other side, my other grandfather ran a boomboat business. So I knew the world really well, and I'd seen everything that she talked about in play with the clear cuts, and then also selective forestry. So second day rehearsal, I just kind of fell in love with the idea of making it.
Well, I mean, I love that, because I mean, just even in watching the film, it felt almost technically very accurate. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but I mean, it felt very sort of genuine. I mean, I guess for you, this is sort of the ultimate kind of the dream job, the role you were meant to sort of put on, on screen yourself. Because I mean, was there any sort of temptation to go, wait, I can direct it, or maybe I shouldn't acted it, or vice versa?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did go back and forth. It's funny how sometimes you get advice from people and they give you advice so that you can do the opposite. So I got advice from people, and a lot of people were like, it's really hard to direct and act in a film. And I'd done it on a couple short films I've directed before. But at the end of the day, I talked to a close mentor and they said, are you gonna know the character better than they do? And I thought, yeah, I will, now that I've adapted it, now that I've and so it felt like it was the best way to take this character's journey was for me to portray it. So, it never would have happened without an incredible team around me to make it all work. But I'm happy with the decision for sure. Yeah.
So in the moment, you may have been regretting it, just given the amount of work, but now you're happy with it.
No, I mean it's funny because it all just kind of felt really organic, honestly. Like there was no point when we were in once we actually entered pre-production or were in production or post that I second guessed it. It really felt organic, and I love as a director actually to be in the trenches with the other actors, and we can sort of influence each other and manipulate each other's performances, and we're sort of like in it together, and you create this circle of trust because you're looking at your director, I think, and going, oh well, they're going through it too. Okay, well we're here together. We can sort of trust each other and lean on each other. So I really enjoyed that actually. Yeah.
Now, I mean, I guess this leans into the age old joke of 90% of the job is in casting, and I mean, I really, in watching the film, I got the sense that everyone was very much on board with the tone of the material, especially sort of that sort of fragile, awkward, sort of, I guess, weird state of masculinity, how it, especially in these environments, it can go one way or the other. Like, can you walk me through just trying to make sure you found the right people for the right job, and not only that, but making sure everyone was on board with the unique tone of the material as well?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I mean, first off, Sam Vigneault, who plays Kevin,
Yeah.
did that role in the stage production with me.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, that was really easy. That was a really easy transfer. But Amy Graining plays Chicky. We had done a couple films before that as actors together, and we just had a really great chemistry and a connection. And to be honest, like I wasn't sure if she'd be right for the role when I thought of her for it, and then she read for it, and I was like, wow, like she just understood this feeling of wanting to escape. And so really, and another person is Ursula Calder, who's like, this is her first movie, who plays Krista. She's never done a movie before, which to me is incredible. And we read a lot of people for Krista, and she was the first person who read with the innocence and sort of the openness that Krista really needed to play opposite Jamie, who is closing himself off. And so we were just really looking for the essence of, the character within them, and then hopefully they could bring themselves to the role. And the amazing thing when you talk about them buying in is that they were all willing to open up and be vulnerable in their performances. And we had time. Mel, my producer, Melanie Wood, was awesome because she allowed us time to rehearse. She budgeted that, which is hard on a micro budget.
Right.
And those even those few days that we had together really sort of solidified us going into the first day, finding a dynamic, and even just getting a drink after a rehearsal and just hanging out together. We oddly spent a lot of time offset together too during the shoot, where we're almost like this mini family. And I think that's part of what came through on the film.
Nice. Now, I mean, something else with the film that really struck me is this. I mean, obviously, like you say, it's a micro budget, or it's even a micro budget, depending on how you want to scale it. But
Yeah,
it felt big, and I'm kind of curious from your perspective, as someone who's so familiar with the stage material, adapting it for the screen. How do you sort of turn off the stage brain and turn on the screen brain? Because it doesn't always, like you and I both know throughout the history of film and other works, adaptations don't always work, but this really does seem to fit quite well.
well, thanks. I appreciate that. That's really nice of you to say. I mean, yeah, I honestly, the first half of the process of me adapting it, I found it hard to transfer to my own voice. I'm such a big fan of Catherine's and her poetic language that, to be honest, I held on to it so dearly for a while. And eventually at one point it was her who said, okay, this is your movie. Go ahead and make it the way that you want to make it. And her giving that permission from someone I respect so much, that's really when it changed for me. And I was able to, dive in and think about what I wanted the antithesis and thesis of the film to be myself. That was a little bit different from the play. And that's when I was able to go, okay, translate it from 15 scenes on stage to the 107 or whatever it is in the movie. Once she gave me that permission, it kind of flew from there.
Now, I mean, when did she write the play? Because I mean, just in watching the film, and especially the issues around masculinity and the issues that your character is sort of going through, it really feels like a story for now. And I'm just kind of curious on the timeline.
She wrote the play. She would have been writing it like, between just after, 2000 and I think this is a guess, 2-ish.
Okay, all right.
Till it was finished in 2008. Yeah, so the first production was in 2008. Yeah.
Now, I mean, and this I gotta focus in on one scene in the film, because I mean, it's with you. You're on the phone. You're talking about the logging work, and you've got this confidence. You've got this bravado about you, and then it slowly peels away, and it slowly sort of dissipates. And I mean, I really felt like that scene was sort of the pivot point for the movie. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, as you're directing yourself, which feels weird to even say, but how do you sort of run through sort of the high and the low of that moment? Because it really felt like such a unique thing to sort of play, especially with sort of no one on the other end of the line kind of thing.
I was lucky enough to have done the play, and then in translating that scene, there were things that had changed story-wise and that I wanted to get across. And in rehearsing it and building it out with Kevin Fraser, our DOP, we had talked really early on about holding the camera and fixating on something and not letting go of it. And so the gift and the curse of that scene was that we were always going to do it in one shot. This like 3.5-minute phone call, we were always going to do it in one shot. That was always going to be the way it was. And so it really was just a lot of prep. I just spent a lot of time running it at home, 1,000 times before we did it on the day. And the crazy thing about that scene is actually that's the first scene that we shot of the film.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We had shot like a small, quick shot of Jamie putting the bird cage into the truck to start the day. And then really that was the first actual scene that we shot. And we kind of did that on purpose because we said, we're making this really small movie and we just kind of want the crew to understand this is how we're going to shoot the film right out of the gate. We're going to kind of take a swing and just hope we hit something. Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm curious, how important is it for you to be able to share a story like this? Because, I mean, in the past, obviously, issues around sort of, men's mental health and masculinity and all that sort of thing have been very black and white, or they've been things that you don't necessarily talk about. But I mean, the reality is they're as complex and strange and screwed up as the next guy. And I mean, how important is it for you, from your perspective, to be able to tell a story like this to show that while on the outside we may think one thing about your character, but there are so many layers beyond that we don't necessarily, expect or we take for granted, really.
I totally know what you mean. Yeah, to me, like a lot of the work I've done is sort of centered around either mental health or sort of these sort of issues around masculinity. And a lot of these characters, a lot of the pieces of the character obviously pulled different pieces from myself, but a lot of it from people that I'm really close to, grew up with, that are in my family. And so, seeing what people taking on a performative armor of masculinity, how they put it on to survive in these communities,
right?
And eventually it welds itself so close to your person that you can't get it off, and now you're isolated yourself from everyone else, and you don't know how to pull it apart anymore. And I just always thought that was such a tragic thing, and to see someone like Jamie, who's so sensitive, become this. It's not, I wouldn't want to say that it's like a cautionary tale exactly, because I don't know if that's exactly the right word for it, but it is sort of a, an opportunity for hopefully people to be seen and to in that go, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't shut myself off from all the people I love, or maybe, maybe I should open up. Maybe vulnerability isn't such a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm curious because, I mean, obviously you've done the festival run and it's gotten audiences and you've gotten feedback, but have you been able to show the film to people who might be a little more closer to the community that you're representing?
I think that in a sense we did get some of that community during Finn here, the Atlantic
Okay.
International Film Festival here in Nova Scotia, because it was part of the community. But I would like more of the community to see it, like the people who reached out to me from different festivals who maybe were like, I grew up in a small town. Oh gosh, like that's my best friend growing up, and something tragic happened to him. Like people who were really related to the specific person or scenario. There were quite a few people who reached out like that, but I would love for it to screen, or for people from rural communities to see it and see if it reflects back what they've experienced in different places as well. But in Nova Scotia, there was people who reached out and said,
Oh, excellent.
"Yeah, this is it." Yeah.
Now this is a dumb question, but it's one I always like to ask. Can you think back to sort of the early days in your life? Was there like a piece of work or a movie or a moment that was like the pivot point for you? That was like, okay, I want to be an actor. I want to be a storyteller. I got to do this job.
Oh, that's a great question. I think when I was a little kid, I was a hockey player and I was very focused on that and sports. And I would act in different plays, but it was sort of like a thing I did for fun, or
Right.
you know. Um, and it was when I was in, like, it would have been late grade 11 or grade 12, somewhere in there. But my friend showed me There Will Be Blood, and
Oh, nice. All right.
I'm just blown away. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, yeah. So I've had this feeling that maybe I want to, for maybe a few months before that, I'd had this feeling like I think I might want to be an actor. And I hadn't thought, okay, well, um, oh, I can be a director, or right. I hadn't thought that's possible at all. But I had seen people touring to my school, doing little plays in like the school gym, and I thought maybe I could do that one day. That'd be amazing. And that was really the film that made me go, oh, there's all sorts of stories that we can tell. We can actually say big things, and the characters don't have to be they can be anti-heroes, and we can say really big things with all sorts of different stories. That was kind of the movie that opened that up for me big time. Yeah.
And we all secretly want to beat Paul Dano to death with a bowling pin, don't we?
This character in that movie is atrocious. Oh, he's so good. He's that performance, I think that performance should have been nominated for an Oscar.
That's one of my favorite films of all time, man. I love that you said that.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, now that just to start putting a bow on this, I mean, now that Bone Cage is starting to sort of get out into the masses, I mean, at the end of the day, what's your hope for the film?
I really hope that folks who are like Jamie or Krista or Chicky or Kev in the film, or even Clarence, the dad, folks that have been in this situation have felt sort of trapped, or felt isolated, that hopefully they feel seen, and maybe it just gets people to start talking to each other when they're afraid. I mean, bottom line, I think that'd be the biggest piece that I'd like to see, is just, even if it's just one person out there goes, I'm going to share with someone close to me how I'm feeling, and maybe it changes someone's life, or maybe they don't hurt themselves or something. Like that would be the biggest thing, really.
Oh, and that's an important thing, man. But you know what, man? Thank you for dedicating basically years of your life to this piece of work, man, because you've made a beautiful film. And I just want to say thank you for the time today.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Thank you. That really means a lot. Seriously. Yeah.
All right. Cheers, Taylor. Thanks again, man.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.